Welcome to the Darkstream Take 2. We're giving this another whirl on Vox Day, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. People are filtering back into the unauthorized chat. They're rolling in the DLive chat, and I'm told that the audio and video are good. My system does not like it when I turn on the microphone after the stream gets started, so lesson learned. So as you know, the social sexual hierarchy is one of the more socially useful taxonomies out there. It has tremendous utility, not just in the world of intersexual relations, but also in pretty much any sort of social relationship, whether it's friends, work, sports, all of this stuff. It's incredibly useful. And one of the things that I noticed lately is that it's very, very useful in learning how to cooperate and collaborate with other individuals, especially other men. Ask yourself this question: what do you do when someone asks you a question? Specifically, when someone asks you to do something for them, what's your instinctive response? What what do you automatically tend to do? And let's assume that we're talking about something that is reasonably comprehensible, and it's something that is well within your capabilities. Chad Chadson says, I immediately think of how to do it efficiently. Okay, that's Lefrick says it depends on who's asking. These are all reasonable responses. Chad, if you immediately think of how to do it efficiently, but what's your response? What is your natural instinctive response? Art Gain says, if he's my boss, I say yes, sir. Cactus Eater Bear, Delta Husband, if I can do it, I can. Q1882 says, on it. So both those responses, if I can do it, I can. I immediately think how to do it efficiently. On it, yes, sir. These are all solid delta responses. That is how the deltas, who are most men, that's how men respond. Now what's interesting is what I tell them when it will be done. Yeah, that's good. Sam Perchansky says, it really depends on who is asking. Now, think about what that says. My response to doing something for someone else depends on who is asking. What are you doing when you put yourself in that position? What you're doing is you're putting yourself in the position of a judge, right? That's not inappropriate. Again, to be blunt, there are no wrong answers here. What I'm interested in is identifying the patterns. Everything about society, everything about communication, everything about human behavior falls into patterns. Whether we recognize them, whether we label them or not. Sometimes the patterns are very complex, hard to see, hard to recognize, impossible to label. But sometimes they're very, very easy and very simple and very direct. If I have a good rapport with the person, the answer is usually positive. If not, the answer is usually fuck off. Yeah, but we're not talking about, we're talking in essentially a collaboration scenario. Obviously we're not looking at a scenario where if your worst enemy comes up to you and asks you to do something from him. This is like the most Delta expression ever. I was assuming the question was coming from a place of authority. Again, Spiderbip says, I would probably ask questions. Actually, it's kind of funny. The two most Delta answers, their natural assumption is that the person asking the question is higher up the ladder. Again, nothing wrong with that. But let's look at this. Let's look at this from an SSH perspective. What does the Delta want to do? The Delta wants to get stuff done. He wants respect for getting stuff done. He wants to do a good job, and he wants to do it well. And so, quite obviously, the Delta takes great pleasure in being asked to do something that he's perfectly capable of doing. It's his chance to shine, But let's think about some of the other SSH ranks. What is the Bravo going to do? If we think about what the Bravo is going to do, what's the Bravo's main concern? Is it getting stuff done? No. His main concern tends to be what his alpha thinks. So the Bravo's natural response is going to be to confirm that the task is authorized. So someone like Owen is naturally going to make sure it's okay with whoever his alpha happens to be, right? So the Bravo's natural the Bravo's natural response is, do you have the appropriate authority? And then, of course, the minute that that's confirmed, boom, he's on it, right? Now, here's where it gets interesting, and here's where it gets really useful. Is one thing that I've been noticing is that when the person responds with a question, you're either dealing with a gamma or somebody who's got some gamma strains in them. And again, there's no wrong answers. There's nothing wrong about this. But what's really interesting is how even when there's no possibility of a reasonable question, the gamma is going to ask the question. Because what's the gamma driven by? The gamma is driven by the desire, in these circumstances, obviously. I mean, everyone's got multiple motivations and so forth. But in these contexts, the gamma tends to be driven by the desire to either prove that he's smart, prove that he knows about everything, or to set himself up as some sort of judge, right? And so, once you become aware of this, and I'm not, again, this is not a criticism of anybody. We're just talking about the observable patterns. And once you become aware of this, it can be comical. It can be downright hilarious. I've learned to, in certain circumstances, to anticipate the questions, make sure that everybody understands I don't want any questions, and then to ask for things to be done in what would almost be an impossible way to misunderstand. And what's funny is, you know that meme of the guy who's like straining in the classroom and it looks like he's bursting out in a sweat and the veins are sticking out in his forehead. You can almost see it. You can almost see the just desperate desire to have to ask some kind of question, or alternatively, here's the other thing, is to the alternative often is to start making suggestions. And so what I would encourage, what is the first rule of SSH related social dynamics? What is the prime initiative? Does anyone remember that? What's my primary advice in social situations? Shut the fuck up. Right? And I don't need to cite you any of the many, many Bible verses that essentially say the same thing. The tongue is a raging wildfire. The tongue is a wild stallion, etc., etc. Every single one of us, myself definitely included, have got themselves in trouble, have put ourselves in situations from which we've had to extricate ourselves, and generally subjected ourselves to various unpleasantries because we said the wrong thing at the wrong time. Spider says, it's so hard to shut up. It really is. It really is for a lot of people. One thing that's nice as you get older and hopefully a little wiser is that, you really do learn to stop talking so much. And again, I'm not talking about, I just wanted to get you guys thinking about what your instinctive response is. Obviously, there's context involved. If somebody comes up to you and says, hey, will you give me your kidney? The answer is going to be no, unless it's like your child, right? We're not talking about that sort of thing. I'm just talking about patterns of behavior that you can use to your advantage, both as the asker and as the person being asked. Obviously, I have various theories about why people respond these ways. What's the alpha's usual answer going to be? No. Alphas just say no. You know, alphas are not big on commitment, right? You know, what's the omega going to say? I'm not sure. I'll have to find some omegas and talk to them. But I mean, my guess would be that the omega will say, yes, absolutely, and then, try to latch on to you somehow. But that's just a guess. What's the sigma going to do? As always with the sigmas, hard to say because it kind of depends on what role the sigma is playing at the time. I'm very, very good when I'm on my soccer team in my delta role. It's yes, absolutely, right away, all that sort of thing, right? In other contexts, I'm probably not the right person to ask about. It might be easier. It might be easier to ask people who work with me. I'll ask two of my good friends, see what they tell me. I wouldn't say that the sigma response is more contextual necessarily. It's just that the sigma behavior tends to be more quixotic, more unpredictable. I mean, it's no different than other areas to which the SSH applies. Sigmas are far more likely to date weird-looking women that happen to appeal to them than any other SSH type. And if you ask a sigma, why do you think she's so attractive? The answer might be, I really like her neck, or something strange like that. I think, I mean, Murakami is obviously, somewhere in the gamma range, but one area where I do think that he gets or portrays a sigma characteristic well is in one of his books. He's completely fascinated with the girl's ears, and he's involved, and he's entranced with this girl who's very plain except for when she pulls her hair behind her ears, and then it just completely transforms her. And of course, because it's Murakami, this turns into a fantastic, fabulous thing that other people notice, and it turns out she's an ear model. And it just gets stranger from there. But that's the sort of thing that you'll often see. And it is actually kind of remarkable how whenever you'll see this. I would suspect that if you were to be able to compile a accurate catalog of the women that a particular sigma finds attractive, they will tend to not necessarily all be really attractive, but they'll all tend to share some characteristics. Sometimes it could be a little strange. That's my guess. Well, this is a good point by Sam. The higher in the hierarchy, the more likely you are to say no. Right. Which might explain why the gamma starts asking questions, why he responds to questions with questions, because he may not have the ability to say no, but he might have the ability to convince the person into retracting their request. That's my theory. Because, and also what I've found is that, and this is why if you're prone to that sort of thing, one reason why I think it's dangerous to respond to questions with more questions, especially when you know perfectly well what it is that they want, is that I have witnessed on several occasions that I can recall. I've probably witnessed on many, many more times than that. But I can specifically recall a number of situations where you ask somebody to do something. It's basic. Instead of doing it, they start asking questions. And they never end up doing what they were originally requested to do in the first place. I mean, how many of you have ever found yourself doing that? Somebody asked you to do something, you got caught up in a discussion of it, and then you never did it. Because the ensuing discussion tended to clutter up the original clarity of the task. Because remember, what do we know? What's one of the main differences between gammas and deltas? Deltas get stuff done correctly. Gammas always find a way to fuck something up, sooner or later. It's inevitable. And that's why it's so important to understand these things. Sam says, or the nature of their question is such that you realize it's easier to do it yourself. Yeah, it is true. After about the fourth, well, what about this? What about this? There is always the temptation to just say, oh, forget it. I'd rather do it myself than deal with you. Now, maybe that's the desire of the person being asked, but that's not a good situation to be in. If you just want to be left alone, why are you in that position in the first place? If you just want to be left to do your own thing, if you don't want to be valuable to others, why are you in your position? Why are you trying to do that job? You're not going to do a good job by making yourself worth less than nothing to other people. For me, one of the most important things was back in 2015 being talked into delegating to others, relying upon others, trusting others to do good work. Castalia Library exists mostly because one individual, our production editor, talked me into permitting him to volunteer and convincing me to rely upon him. I'm pretty confident that Castalia Library wouldn't exist in its current form if he hadn't done that. Sam says, that is 100% the desire of some of the men doing this. Well, certainly. But what I'm pointing out to those men is that that's a foolish decision. That's short-term beneficial. I'm left alone. That's long-term detrimental. I have demonstrated my worthlessness to this person. I mean, if you think about it, that's exactly the opposite of what the Delta wants to do. The Delta wants to prove his worth. And if you just don't want to do it, Or if you're just not going to do it, just go ahead and say it. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. There's no need to play games and be evasive. So you see, as we talk about this, you see how that's intrinsically gamma. Because you're engaging in a form of conflict, but it's very passive, it's very indirect. It's not a direct, are you sure that this is what you want me to do? Here are my issues. Here are my reasons why I don't think that's a good thing to do. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe there's another priority that they forgot. Maybe it intrinsically conflicts with another project objective. But if you're just doing it because you don't want to be relied on, or you don't feel like doing it, but you won't tell the person directly, then I think you need to look at what your real motivations are. And also look at what the logical consequences of your behavior are. Because, nobody who wants to be successful at anything they do should be attempting to demonstrate their worthlessness to others. Gray Matter Bear says, is it gammas or omegas that does the bare minimum at work? That's a good question. I mean, honestly, I think you could throw sigmas in there too. Just sigmas might be working hard. It just might not have anything to do with what their actual job is. But I think it's probably omegas that do the bare minimum in general. I might have that wrong. Sam says, we have a whole department at my company headed by a guy that plays the questions game, and it just kills morale. We try to avoid that team. Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, it's such a deceptive strategy because they're constantly, I'm just trying to understand. I'm just trying to help. No, you're not. You're not helping anyone. Questions, and I've said this many times, questions are not intrinsically good. Questions are not intrinsically desirable. Questions are often stupid. They're often irrelevant. They're often unnecessary. And they're often a waste of time. And I've also got news for you. For those of you who engage in that ever so appreciated behavior of, I'm going to ask you a question about what you want me to do that is totally obvious in order to try to avoid being held accountable for my potential failure. Okay. We get that. We know what you're doing. It was funny back when I owned this company I shouldn't say owned, when I ran this company in the UK, and I would get a phone call from the VP who was the hands-on manager, and he would say, well, we've got two options here. Should we do this logical thing that isn't going to cost very much and has a good chance of success and won't cost too much money? Or should we do this obviously stupid thing that's going to be very expensive, has a very low probability of success, and will almost certainly blow up in our faces? And I started to get irritated at him the first couple times that he did this. And then I realized what he was doing was he was mentally shifting the responsibility for the decision to me. So that even though option A was what he wanted to do and what he believed was the right thing to do, he didn't want responsibility for it. So I thought, foolishly as it turned out in the long run, I thought, okay, fine, they want me to cover their ass, I'll cover their ass. No problem. So I would listen to option A, obvious option A, stupid option B, and even more stupid option C, and I would listen to it seriously, and then I would think about it for a second, and then I would say with great authority and conviction, well, I really think that we should pursue option A. That's my decision. I want you to do option A. And all I was really telling him is, fine, I'll take the responsibility, right? Now here's the ironic thing. The decision that killed that company was a decision that this particular individual knew was a bad decision. But he wanted to go in the other direction. And so he orchestrated this entire thing and stage managed this meeting with this Korean company and convinced them to not offer me what the company had proposed to us. Because he was going to do it. He told them that it'd be better if he proposed it. And then he never proposed it to me and told them no. I mean, and he only hurt himself in the end because, missing that boat ended up, just running the company downhill. And I never knew about it. I didn't know about it until after the company was sold, for a lot less than it should have been worth. Simply because he had his ego tied up in the success of a project that this new project would have superseded, that this new deal would have superseded. So even if you go out of your way to allow subordinates to punt on taking responsibility and stuff, they'll still play stupid games like that. And so that was a real lesson to me in just you have to have people that you can actually trust, people that you can rely on. And I mean, this guy was a sales guy. I knew he was, probably not in the top 10% of the people I considered to be most ethical or trustworthy. But I thought that at least he would be interested in making more money. But, turns out his ego was too tied up in succeeding his way rather than the company just being successful. C'est la vie. Not the dumbest, not even close to the dumbest stuff I've experienced. I mean, frankly, the more that you learn about the SSH, how it applies to the office environment, and the petty and stupid games that people play in those environments, it's remarkable that anything ever gets done. But that's the way it is. Fortunately, even this little, try this. Don't take my word for it. Try it. When you go to work the next time, go ask somebody that you suspect is a gamma. Go to somebody else that you suspect is a delta and ask them to do something that you know is appropriate, that you know they certainly have the capacity to do. See how they behave. If you're on Social Galactic, post it. Post your experience. Tell us all what you see. I'm very curious to see if this is a meaningful observation or it's just a trivial happenstance that isn't actually useful. But I suspect that it is. It's always interesting to me how much shorter. Let me rephrase it. It's always interesting to me that the more delta the person is, the shorter the conversations are about work that has to be done. It's fascinating. Wilson Bear, if you haven't received an invitation to Social Galactic, try emailing me with your with whatever the email is that you joined UATV. I'll get it to the appropriate people. We'll get you on there. Gray Matter Bear says, "That's not my job," is the frequent answer at work. Well, that's why I said make sure you make sure that the requests are appropriate, reasonable, in line with what their job is. If you're telling, if you're telling the center on the football team to throw the ball, he's going to say, "That's not my job," and he's right. That's not my job is a perfectly reasonable answer at work if somebody's being asked to do something that isn't their job. So, I don't understand what "they are" means, but anyhow, try it out. See what you see. Do Bravo, Gamma, and Sigma tend to be more situationally fractal than Alpha, Delta, and Omega? Well, Bravo is only situationally fractal. It's not situationally fractal so much as situationally binary. The Bravo is primarily driven by his relationship with the Alpha. So that context is always relevant to the Bravo. I don't think that Gammas are situationally fractal at all. Somebody is reeing for some reason. I don't know why. Do explain. Glad you touched on this, and then the re. No, it was two different people. Sorry. The biggest delta I work with would get noticeably frustrated with fulfilling requests, but would do it anyways until our boss intervened. Yeah, well, that's that is classic delta behavior. Even if they don't think that the job is appropriate, even if they don't want to do it, their natural tendency is to do it, whether it's his job or not. So, to me, "that's not my job" actually sounds more like a female response than anything. Women are the world experts at avoiding doing anything that is actually their job and constantly attempting to do things that are not their job. That's why they gravitate to HR like nobody's business. A neurotic delta seems like a gamma. It's hard to separate the personality traits from the patterns. I don't think so. You know, I think Leofric is a little frustrated. He says, it's a female response and a lambda response. I do not recommend working IT in San Francisco. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of amazing how the difference between the I'm on it and that's not my job are. I mean, those are practically they practically have an inverse relationship. And it's not just in that response, it's in the entire psychologies and behavioral patterns behind those things. You know, I mean, it really can be comical. And of course, being someone who is a amateur student of human behavior, I will confess that I'm not above occasionally, um, you know, testing people's behavior just to see what the response is going to be. You know, I mean, it's really funny when you say, would you please do this very trivial, very reasonable thing that you clearly have the time and ability to do, just to see how they're going to say no. Renee says, my boss is a Sigma and has never had sunless. I gotta adjust my glasses here. Oh no, that's right. My boss is a Sigma and has never had success. There we go. He's never had he's never had success with men working for him. Is that because the males can't figure him out? No, it's because he's a Sigma. He's a Sigma. Sigmas are not good at doing the active management that is required for hierarchical success. You know, one of the reasons that Castelli is successful is because we have a eclectic and intelligent group of people who are mostly self-starters. The only person who is part of the team who required, kind of social management was not a particularly effective member of the team, despite being a competent individual. And so, OG Fem wasn't around. What's an alpha response? The alpha response, the instinctive alpha response is no. Alphas are not afraid to say no. I mean, there's a reason why Sigmas tend to be unsuccessful in organizations. Sam says, I got it done, boss. Sigma says, great. Now go do whatever it is you do on your own time. Yeah, it is really, really difficult. I always feel that I'm barely one step ahead of what people are supposed to do because I'm not thinking about that at all. Alphas are always thinking, about other people. Sigmas aren't. And to be successful in an organization is very helpful to actually think about what other people are doing. And not just pay attention to it, but care about it. You know, it is a definite Sigma weakness in most social and professional contexts. Is what it is. You know, what I try to do, now that I better understand the SSH, what I try to do is, in a specific context, I attempt to put myself in the mindset of the optimal SSH figure. So, you know, if you're in a delta role, try to think and act like a delta. If you're in a alpha role, try to think and act like an alpha. I mean, obviously don't take it to the point of hitting on the young women just because you're trying to think like an alpha. But, you know, I think you get the point. So a couple things to show you that I think you might be interested in seeing. I know that some of you have been ordering the Junior Classics. Thank you very much for that. And I can confirm they do actually exist, although you can't really tell because it does not like the green. Let's go with this one. This should work better. So this is Volume 8, Heroes of History. And here, I bet if I open this up, that'll work better. There we go. There's Volume 7, The Animal Book, which has a very nice picture of a sea otter on the spine and a really touching story about sea otters in it. I'm not kidding. It's like, I mean, there are people who are going to read the Animal Book and they will have tears in their eyes by the time they finish the story of the sea otter. It's a great story. Also features the new modern classic by John C. Wright. You may recall his excellent story, The Parliament of Beasts and Birds, which of course is what inspired the cover image, which Lacey Fairchild of Arkhaven did an excellent job on. Anyhow, these books, I highly encourage that you get them if you have children, because they are one of the greatest tools you can possibly have for educating your child and promoting their intellectual development. The whole reason that we got into them is because they were a huge influence on me, and I was horrified when I realized how much they had gone downhill by the time of the final edition in 1992. So the other reason that you should think about getting books at Arkhaven rather than Amazon is because we include, not only do we sell them at a bit of a discount, but they also include the ebook. OG Femme is flexing. She's a backer. She already ordered the leather set. The leather set you can see above my head. Actually, you can see two of them. The one right above me is the leather set in cow that is available, and the one above that is one of the extremely, incredibly rare goatskin sets. So I've got one set. We've sold two, and there's like I think 10 total. Wilson Bear says, "Can I still order the whole set?" Well, what you can order is 1 through 8, and you can do that at Arkhaven. There's even an additional discount on the original one. Well, it says OG Femme. So, or does it say Fern? Maybe it says Fern. No, it says femme. Um, anyhow, uh, oh, the whole leather set. I think we might have like a maximum of like 3 leather sets left, but we're not going to put those out for sale until um, uh, until we are certain that we have gotten them to everyone. We, we always keep a few extras around, even when we go fully out of stock, just in case. So, but we will eventually put those up for sale at some point when once we're confident. Once the whole series is finished, we're confident that we've gotten them out to everybody, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing I have to show you is this is for the gamers. The Minarian Legends. This is written by the creator of Divine Right, and it is without a doubt the board game with the greatest quantity of lore ever created. It didn't work out for us to actually publish the game, but I'm very proud that we published the book. We're going to be doing another book or two by Glenn in the near future. Ashton Duke says, I need these books. Honestly, they're excellent. You can't, I mean, think about it. We offer a lot of books for sale. This is my own book that just came out, and I don't push it the way that I push the junior classics. I think the stories are pretty good, but do they really, are they important the way that the junior classics are? No. You know, um, because I've seen the impact that they had on me. I've seen the impact that they've had on children, and not just my kids, but also, uh, you know, others. And I mean, honestly, I think if you don't count Lord of the Rings, if you just leave stuff that you really like out of it, I think probably the two sets of books that have had the most impact on my thinking and my intellectual development over time have been the junior classics and Jerry Pournelle's There Will Be War series. I don't even agree anymore with a lot of the things that I picked up from the There Will Be War series originally, but there's no question that going through that intellectual process is what helped me get to the point that I'm at now. So, for what it's worth, my favorite series, of course, is the Cambridge Medieval History series. So, go figure. Anyhow, thanks to all of you for making the Volume 7 and 8 launch successful. What age range are the junior classics for? I think you can go as young as 7 if the children are a bit on the precocious side. And I think they're entertaining reading up until about 16. So anything in the 7 to 16 range is reasonable. I mean, obviously, if they're 7, you might want to read to them. But I can tell you for a fact that kids will read and reread and reread the junior classics books. I mean, I probably read the entire series except for the poetry volume like 4 or 5 times when I was a kid. Castalia House Lord of the Rings leather edition incoming? Well, no, because we'd have to get permission. So, and you can see the 2 Chuck Dixon's Conan books on my table. We might have some interesting things to discuss related to that in a few weeks, but it's all good, and we'll see how it goes. But um, anyhow, thanks for tuning in, and don't forget, give that response to a question thing a try at work, and let us know what you come up with on Social Galactic. The VFM are bloodthirsty, involving the crushing of enemies and lament of women. I hope. No, we're not looking. We're not looking for a fight. You and I don't think that there's going to be one. I think that I think there's going to be some mutually beneficial agreements that could lead to some interesting possibilities. So, Ashton says, my father read me The Hobbit when I was about 7. It opened up the world of literature to me. Yeah, it's a gift. You must read to your kids, but read them good stuff. Don't read them Harry Potter. Let them read Harry Potter and the Hunger Games or whatever the popular series du jour is when they're old enough to read by themselves. But give them a taste, get them a taste for the good stuff. So, all right. On that note, I wish you all a good evening. I'm Vox Day, and this is the Darkstream.